I am a firm believer that the best brands and the best companies are being intentional, strategic, experiential. And they are, by doing those three things, they are engaging their customers in meaningful ways, whether it's digitally or whether it's face to face. So tell me a little about, what do you see? What are, from a broad stroke, what are some of the best companies doing strategically and experientially? What are you seeing?
I think it comes down to, first and foremost, understanding your brand and your brand objectives, right? And we all talk about, what are your objectives? What are the things you're trying to accomplish in an event? And if you don't nail that first and foremost, everything you do afterwards is not going to make you happy. You're not going to achieve those objectives. So I always say that it's best to have no more than 1 to 3 objectives for an event. And I know that for all you planners out there, you're thinking about, all my boss and this guy and this organization and this department, they all have different things they're trying to accomplish. How do I nail it down? You need to force it. You need to do some stakeholder alignment up front. Because at the end of the day, you can't design an effective experience against 20 objectives. You need to say, all right, what is the one main thing we're trying to accomplish? And maybe have a couple of other ancillaries around there. So it starts with objectives, and I'll get into a little bit more detail in just a second. But then it goes into understanding your audience. And I'm not saying that you need to find, oh, this person's a manager of finance or a healthcare provider or whatever the role is you're targeting. You need to understand who they are as human beings, first and foremost. And that's something a lot of us fail at in the B2B space, especially. On the B2C side, we're much better at that because there's all kinds of money being spent on developing audience personas and researching consumers and understanding what makes them tick and all of that. On the B2B side, we're not as good at that. So it is important to really understand who these people are as people, right? And it could be as simple as, is this a Gen Z audience? Is this a boomer audience? Start with the generation that they typically are. Look at their roles and the pain points that they have. Really understand what their interests are based on their roles and their personas. Observe them, survey them. It gives us an opportunity to understand what makes these guys tick. What's their day look like? How can we create a campaign for them that's really going to resonate and be meaningful for them? So if you understand your brand and you understand your audience, the third part is to understand what's happening in the marketplace. So what trends are out there you can capitalize on or avoid? What are your competitors doing? What's happening in your industry that you need to know about so that what you do isn't tone deaf, that it resonates, that it's meaningful, that it stands out? So that's sort of a macro view of looking at those three things. Yeah. To become experiential, what happens in the very middle of those three things is an insight you get. You say, okay, here's what I'm trying to accomplish. Here's what my audience is into, and here's where they consume media, and here's what's happening in the marketplace. And you take those three things, and just by going through some mind mapping or some brainstorming or going out there, you can come up with some really interesting ideas. And when I say trends, I don't just mean event trends, right? Oh, 47% of event marketers are increasing their budgets. That means nothing to anybody. What you need to understand is what's hot, what's interesting, what's new right now. What are people doing on TikTok? Right? Really think about what are those things that are catching the imagination. I like to look at other industries. I like to look at other publications. I like to look at other walks of life to see what's working and seeing if I can move it to another industry or move it into events. I came across this thing on TikTok, which is goths in places that you don't expect them. And it were these goth guys that are like at an amusement park or at a barbecue or places you don't expect them to be, camping, right? And I thought it was interesting because that sort of talks about what you want experiential to be. And it's showing up in a perhaps the same place, but a different place with something completely unexpected, something people don't expect that will stand out and is truly an experience, something that really immerses them. For something to be experiential, you need to think about the root of the word. Is it an experience? Or is it just a booth? Or is it just a talking head on stage? To be an experience, it needs to invite the end user, right? The customer, the prospect, whoever it is, to be part of it. They need to participate in it. In fact, I looked at some of the things at CES, which were interesting to me. Nikon had an excellent booth where they had this futuristic Tron-like motorcycle. And they were showing how their video and photography production equipment really worked and what the benefits of it were. And it was on a mini stage, and people could go sit on this Tron cycle, and they do a full video production of the adventures of you on this cycle, going through all of these different things. And you were able to be part of the experience and see the editing happening live as it was around you. And you really felt like you were doing something cool. But at the end of the day, it wasn't an experience for experience sake. It was an experience that really talked about the features and benefits of what Nikon brought the audience, right? So to be a valid experience, it needs to invite that participation, have people become a part of it. It needs to be something that will resonate afterwards. So now people will have this little video clip they can put on social media, continue the conversation. It needs to be about your brand and your product in a meaningful way, not just features and benefits. Here's bullet points on a slide. And it needs to really stand out from what other people are doing. And there's all kinds of things that you can do, all kinds of things that don't work, all kinds of things that do work. But the idea is to find that thing that triangulates. It understands what's happening again in the marketplace, understands what your brand is all about, your products are all about, and really understands the audience and what makes them tick.
You know what I'm hearing you say, it's all really good stuff. We could probably stop the call right now, but what I'm hearing you say is essentially ideas are great and trying to build experiences, but you need a foundation to work from. You need to draw ideas from a foundation. And I think this is the strategy part that people miss. They just start talking about, okay, let's get ideas out there to engage people. Like as an exhibit house company, we get people saying, oh, let's do a ski ball. And I'm like, why? You know what I mean? They just want to do stuff. So the foundation you're talking about is objectives. I love you said stakeholder alignment. I think that's a really big one. If you're an event marketer and you're running a trade show program or an event program, you need the alignment from your stakeholders. You need to understand, what are these goals? What are we after? What are we truly trying to cultivate? The idea about the audience, what kind of human beings are they? And then tying in what's happening in the marketplace, all that dumping out to what is the problem that you solve for these people, and how do you convey and connect the dots to them? But you got to work from a foundation. And that is like what I would urge is the strategy of what you're saying is you got to map that first. You have to have that brainstorm.